Hi, hi, hi. This is a T92 HMC. This is an American Tier 10 SPG, and the map is Tundra. I'm going to tell you a story about Grandma Jean. So, Grandma Jean, I forget her full name, but her first name was Grandma Jean. Grandma Jean was my neighbor when I was a kid. Grandma Jean and John was her husband. Never called him Grandpa John, it was just Grandma Jean. So she wasn't my real grandmother. She was just an old woman that lived next door, house next door. And if you see this fence directly in front of me, that's the type of fence they have, an old fence like that. And we used to kick our soccer balls through the fence into their side of the yard, and John used to get angry all the time. He was always angry at us nasty 5-year-old kids kicking soccer balls into his yard. Oh, look at all these guys. Look at how they know how to hide from Artie. And one day, this is when I was in a high chair. My mother was a crazy woman. I'm going to tell you my mother was a crazy woman. Took him out of the game. So my mother was always threatening when I was a child. She said she was going to put me out in the backyard and sit me in the high chair. And I had no idea what she was talking about. I was just a little toddler. So one day she did it. One day I was sitting in the backyard in the high chair and just sitting there wondering, why am I here? I have no idea. All I know is my mother's crazy. And I was out there for a long time. It had to have been like a half an hour. And at some point, my neighbor, John, he's an old man. You know, I would guess he was like 80 years old or something. He saw me sitting outside in the high chair all by myself in the backyard. You know what I mean? It's like that. Wouldn't you think that's a little weird? And John, he's not going to talk to my mother. He probably knows my mother's a crazy woman. And my father's, he's a very reasonable, logical person. So he probably said to my father, why is your child sitting in a high chair all by himself out in the backyard? And so they got mad at my mother. And it didn't happen. My mother was, she was a bitch, So it was rare that she ever admitted that she was wrong. Usually it was because someone else saw something that she did and called her out on it. And this is an example of that. Got a bad report from the neighbor. So one day they told me that John had died. And I was just a child. I mean, I could have been 6 years old, 7 years old. They said John had died. You didn't see him around anymore. And Grandma Jean, she was from the South. She was from Georgia. So she had an old car from like the 70s, and she had fog lights on it. She bragged about how her fog lights was from living in Georgia, where it's foggy everywhere. Every road you drive on, there's fog everywhere. All the fog in the driving and driving in the car in the fog. And eventually, she moved. And it was a sad day for all of us because we all loved Grandma Jean. Mostly because she gave good Halloween candy or something like that. And that was pretty much it. Was like Halloween, you'd get good candy. And I remember going inside of her house a few times, and she had an old lady house, and that was basically it. We didn't really socialize. Just say hello. All she was a neighbor we said hello with. And she was always nice to us. And I think it was more my mother pushing what a wonderful person Grandma Jean was, more so than Grandma Jean just being exceptional at anything. So a few years ago, I was visiting my father, and my father used to talk to me about stuff. So new neighbors had moved in, and they had a kid named Colin, and because my father doesn't really speak English, he kept calling him Colin. Hey, go get a Colin. What's his name? Colin? My niece is named Madison, and he calls her Medicine. What do you think of the chances he's going to run on the cap? Ah, okay. I knew that it was an equal chance he was going to come out. He was a greater chance he was going to come after me. So what happened was, before my father died. We were sitting in the living room. He says, "Oh, when what is the neighbor's name? John. When they got divorced." I said, "No, the neighbor's not John. The neighbor was whatever the neighbor's name was." He said, "No, not him. The old man, John, and Jean." He didn't remember her name. He would remember John. When they got divorced. I said, "What do you mean they got divorced? You told me he died." My parents lied to me. They couldn't handle telling me that the neighbors got divorced, so they told me that he died. Like that's the better thing for me to handle. That's what can you believe that that's what they said to me? Come on. I don't remember Colin's dad's name. When I was a kid, they mentioned, "Oh, the neighbor, he's Jewish." This was when I was in high school. They said, "Okay, I accept you on your word that he's a Jewish person." And then I went to college, and then I came back at the end of the semester. I said, "Oh yeah, I get it. He's Jewish." Then I saw it. Went to college in Long Island. So then I said, "Oh yeah. He just looks like a person who is Jewish." Okay, so that was the game. I got amazing amount of damage, 1,200 damage. If you have any questions or comments, and I'm sure you do, please post below.